Welcome to the Midlife Maverick podcast, where we challenge the conventional path, reconnect with what matters, and help men rewrite the second half of their story. Today, I'm speaking with Arnold Beekes, founder of Brain Gym Fitness. Arnold spent decades fitting in, chasing success on the outside while ignoring what was going on underneath. Conditioned from childhood to live by other people's expectations, he hit a turning point in midlife and decided it was time to break free. Arnold's mission today, or should I say Arnold's quest, is to help men dismantle the invisible straitjackets that hold them back and to train what he calls their brain fitness so they can truly live their own lives. We talk about his personal story, his framework for unconditioning the mind, and why redefining success is so essential for men in midlife. If you've ever felt stuck, disconnected, or like you're living someone else's script, this episode will challenge you to think differently about who you really are and who you want to become. So let's dive in. Arnold, welcome to the Midlife Mavericks podcast.
Happy to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it too, mate. Generally, when I kick off, I've got a couple of questions I like to ask my guests. And it starts out with saying, if you and I were to be boarding an aeroplane, where would we be going? Do you have a favorite holiday destination, or is there a bucket list item somewhere you want to go?
I don't have a favorite destination, and as the situation in the world changes, I would say quite rapidly, it's not easy to have one destination and let's say that's what I have for the rest of my life. I have a list of many countries where I would like to go to next if things fall apart here, but I'm constantly adapting and changing that thing because, there's a government change. There's riots now there. No, I'm not going there. It's like, yeah, so I've been keeping this list for 8-9 years now. Let me explain why. 8-9 years ago, I lived in Budapest in Hungary. And for your audience, I'm Dutch, so I'm not Hungarian. So it's like I lived there for a year. I loved it, but then I had to go back to the Netherlands to take care of my mother. My mother became very sick and dementia and Parkinson's, so I had to move into her house. And very soon she needed 24/7 care, which I provided. But I always okay. Once this is finished, finished sounds a bit harsh, but you know what I mean. My mother died, and then I had to sell the house and everything. So a year and a half ago, I was finally free. But I kept since that a list is like, hey, I'm not going to Hungary again because I know that. So I want to go somewhere else. And what is somewhere else? And I started off with Portugal, and other list, whatever. Yeah, well, I don't know how many iterations I've done, but it's like basically every week I add something new or I change something because, that's what's happening in the world.
Yep. Can I ask what's next? What's next on the list? Maybe then.
I'm currently looking at a couple of countries: Guatemala, Uruguay, and Tunisia.
Beautiful, mate. They're very interesting places. I can't say I've been to any of them, but definitely places I'd also love to check out for sure. Off the back of that, so we're sitting on this plane and we're heading to one of those lovely destinations. If I was to ask you about your mission or your purpose in life right now, would you have a clear answer on that?
Yes, I call it my quest.
Your quest.
I always like to create new definitions rather than use definitions like purpose, where there are 6,000 definitions of what it is, and already in itself that's confusing. So I call it my quest, and my quest is how the invisible drives the visible.
The visible drive the visible.
No, how the invisible drives the visible.
Right, how we invisible drive the visible. I'd like to dive into that a little bit more. What do you mean by that?
Well, it started from my perspective with, when you look at humans, there is an outer way where how humans express themselves. That's what they do or what they say. Huh? That is not necessarily what they think, feel, sense, what is going on inside of them. And most of the time, we socially adapt to what we're supposed to say and do. Huh? And that is, I think, we humans are. I use the metaphor of an iceberg. Yeah? We are really like an iceberg where you see a very small tip above the water, but that is just 1/10. 9/10 of the iceberg is below the water and you don't see it. But that huge piece below the water, in combination with the wind and the current, determines the direction of the iceberg. It's not the piece above the water. Huh? I think that's the same with humans. Eh? We, like I said, the above water piece, the visible piece, if you like, is like what we do and say. But what is much, much more important and influencing your own behavior is yeah, what you feel, your emotions are, what your spirituality is, all these things which we cannot see.
Mhm. I love that, mate. I really do. I think that's a good quest of how the invisible drives the visible. And this is a lot of what we're going to dive into today. So it's a nice analogy that you've given of the iceberg there. Before we dive into all this and we talk about brain fitness and flying out of the mental straitjacket, I'd love to go back to the beginning a little bit and talk about maybe your childhood and, the early days.
Yeah, well, when you are a child, you don't know that. But my childhood was very challenging. Um, I would say that by today's definitions, I would say that two of my siblings and both my parents would now have been diagnosed with a mental illness. But they were not, because when I grew up, there was a total different focus, and those things, well, it did exist, but not in the way it does today. So that was very hard, very, very hard.
Sounds very challenging. I think I read somewhere on your website, or maybe I heard you on another podcast saying that your dad was a military man, was he?
Yes, my father was a military officer, and well, there can be differences, but at home he was even more authoritarian than at his work.
Mm.
Mm. So there was never a discussion or never a question or whatever. He's like, do this, do this, do this, do that. Yeah, and yeah, that was the way it was, and that had a huge impact on all of our family members.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I couldn't imagine what that would have been like. There's a line on your website where you wrote, "I was conditioned to live someone else's life." And I feel that that resonates well with me, and it probably resonates with a lot of men because we sort of got the social pressure or the social structure to go through and tick all these boxes, but maybe none of these boxes are who we truly are. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit. When you sort of put that line together, what were you thinking?
Well, that is what I realized a long term into my life. When I was at the beginning of my 40s, I realized, no, it was actually a question of my first coach, which I had. I'm talking about the year 2000. Now having a coach and approaching it is very normal and very common, and people do that. In the year 2000, it was not. Uh, but then I got what the Americans call a perfect storm. I lost my job. I got a divorce. My father died. Um, so I was into kind of a new beginning. And I was with that coach, and the coach, and I was ranting about, because I was very successful in the corporate world from at least an above iceberg perspective. Yeah. And I was ranting. It's like, I don't want a boss anymore. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this anymore. And then he said, Arnold, but what do you want? Huh? What do you want? What does it look like? I was totally lost for words. This was the first time in my life, and again, I was beginning 40. This was the first time in my life ever anyone had asked me that question. And later on, that is when I realized, coming back to your question, I was constantly meeting expectations of other people. Meeting expectations of my father, meeting expectations of my teachers, of the professors, of my bosses. Yeah? I was not living my own life. I was doing what these other folks expected me to do, and if I did it properly, they would not be angry. Huh? And that's what, like, well, I know very well that to play that game, and I totally ignored is like, who am I? Who's Arnold? What do I want? What do I love to do? That was for me the shift, and that is what I call from fitting in to flying out. That's my current training program. Is like fitting in is essentially living someone else's life. I was living the life of my father, of my bosses, of my teachers, and because they thought it's like, oh, everything's going fine with Arnold. Well, above the iceberg, but below the iceberg, not.
Yeah, awesome, man. It's a good thing to recognize, and I think it's a tough thing for a lot of us to come to measures with. You talk about a lot of things happening in your life at that time that probably pushed you a little bit towards coaching, but I just want to confirm, what was the thing that led you to get your first coach? Was it the death of your dad and everything that sort of happened around it, or did something else sort of click for you at that point in time?
No, well, I realized that I was moving into kind of a no man's land where, like, it's totally different now. There are all kinds of books, resources, articles, things, what to do. In the year 2000, it was not. And so I was like, I have no clue where to begin, where to start, how to look for that. And I had been to a, well, actually, a very interesting meeting is called a network for management and meditation, and there the speaker was the man I asked to be my coach, and then I was like, oh, I think he can put me on the right track. So I'm very happy that I did that. It took a lot of courage because he was a man who at that point in time was coaching quite famous Dutch people. Um, well, like in the public eye. And I was like, shall I ask? Well, I'm not a famous guy. So, and at the same time, it's like, because he's coaching, it's like, maybe it's totally unaffordable. So it's like, but anyway, I approached him and it was still doable. So that is when I took my first coach. And I've been very happy that I did so.
Yeah, yeah, awesome, mate. I'd like to dig into that a little bit more because I think, there's that hurdle for a lot of guys to admit that they want coaching or to take on a mentor with like that. Because it sounds like a life coach or, a health coach or a mentor like that. And, we have this sort of idea that we can do it ourselves, or we don't want to admit or be vulnerable to say that we're struggling or that we need help. How did that go for you? And when you started coaching, did you feel like you'd made the right decision there?
Yeah, well, I'm used to that. I don't care so much what other people think or say. Yeah? So because the way how I grew up and I had to do things, it was already quite different than most people. So I'm like, I don't care so much. So that was not part of the consideration. The part of the consideration is because I saw him interact and give a presentation. I'm like, oh, that's exactly where I am. But it was like a total new life. A total new life where just about the curtain opened up and I was looking outside and I'm like, it looks very attractive, but I have no clue what to do. For me, it felt very easy, and I was really happy that he had time and it was to a certain level affordable for me. So I was like, I'm gonna do that. Yeah, so that is, but my whole drive was around my curiosity because I had been successful in the corporate world. I knew how to play that game, yeah, and how to do this thing. But this was a game I'd never played, and I didn't know. So I was like, it would be nice if someone helped me a little bit. And why you also need an external thing, because you realize that a lot of your so-called friends are related to the work you do. Yeah. Or are your former colleagues, but if there's just a few months gone, you don't hear anything from them. Yeah? So you're out there by yourself. You're totally alone. So then it's nice if you have someone who, well, at least cares about Arnold and wants to help me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's great to have a guide or to have someone to hold you accountable. And like you say, someone to ask those powerful, reflective questions that we just never stop to think about. We're so much in the hustle, in the grind, in the go, 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 but we never step back to think, well, what do I want? And like you said before, like, who is Arnold? If we were to go deeper on that, so when you started coaching and you started going through this process, like, how did that slowly start to change your life and point you in the direction to where you are today?
I would say, it's like, well, it's also applicable here, but especially also later in my life. Well, I don't know exactly the history, but the old Greeks, they have a saying. It's called "die before you die," and essentially it means is die for the old world and your old way of doing things, and at least is like leave that behind and start a new life before you're dead. And that is something with yeah, like I said, my curiosity was driving me. It's like, I want to figure all these things out. And like, how does it work? And what is it? And why are so many people attracted to that? And what's this? And what's that? And what's this? And what's that? It was like, I'm like, I really wanted to know. Yeah, so it's like, so I did workshops, I did trainings, online courses, read articles, books, because I had the feeling in the corporate world that, well, I was kind of a hotshot, but in hindsight, from the mental and business side of things, yeah, I know how to play that game. But emotionally, spiritually, environmentally, socially, all these other things, I had no clue. So, but I wanted to know. Yeah, so it's like, oh wow, I didn't know that world existed. I didn't know it was that. Like spirituality. Like, I could hardly say the word. Like, what is it? Yeah, like, I always had that image of pale looking guys with beards and gray socks. But like, what is that? Why so many people attracted? What do they do? How does it work? Yeah, and so, and I'm like, I dive into those things. Yeah? Because I think anything new, you got to try.
I love your curiosity, and that keeps coming back up. It sounds like it's a real strength of yours to dive into that. But it sounds like for the first, 40 years of your life, you were so ingrained in that corporate job and in fitting in and maybe ticking those boxes that you didn't look outside of that. And then obviously since then, you've had this shift and you've opened your eyes to these other potentials and these other ideas. But how easy was it to break out of that? Because I think when we're stuck in our ways for so long in those belief systems or in that identity that we hold, to be able to let go of that and to be so curious or so open to something like spirituality, let's say, is a huge shift.
Yes and no. My curiosity, yeah, it's I'm fortunate that I have it, and a big part of it that was already as a young age. I think everybody has it, but it's suppressed. But it's not suppressed even because in business I always had to set up new businesses, new technologies, new departments, new products, new services. So that curiosity was always part of what I did. So that was not a new thing for me. But the main thing is I really, really started to realize that a lot of the messages which we are being told, the narrative what we're being told, is not true. In the sense that most businesses, not all, but most businesses say, we care about the people. No, they don't. They care about the profit. They don't care about you. Just like they say, we care about the climate. They don't. So, and everything is like, yeah, if you do exactly what we tell you to do, and you do this, you will get a career, and yeah, you will get married, and you will be happy and healthy and nice, and everything will be nice. No, you don't. So all of the narrative which we get about life, about work, I started realizing is that most of them are lies. Most of them are lies to keep you what I call in the cage. Huh? You're in a cage. We all live to a certain extent in a cage where the cage is you need to work in order to create an income. Then you need consumption because, well, you need a house and a car and food and everything, whatever. And then you need entertainment because most of the time, all the previous two are quite lousy. So you need your entertainment to get ever. But in order to, well, to get on holidays or these things, but in order to do that, you need money, so you need to work. But it's a cage. It's a cage. It's a circle where you cannot get out, where they keep you in the cage. Yeah. And they prefer that you spend a lot of money on all these things because then you start working harder to get the money to do all those other things.
Yep. It's an evil cycle, isn't it? The system is broken, and yet we just continue to go round and round in that circle, or round and round in that cage, as you say. How do we break free of that cage? Or how did you break free of that cage?
Well, I was helped. I was helped, and by like I was kicked out of the business. We were taken over by another company, and that was one part. And then later on, it was like yeah, and I well I showed that all the big bosses were lying. Huh? They didn't like that. So instead of looking in the mirror, it was let's get rid of Arnold. Huh? So I was kicked out. My marriage ended. My father died. So all these things were like, I don't want that anymore. I was really fed up with all of those things. It's like all of these promises is like, yeah, you do this and that, and then everything is fine. And then there's a takeover, or like, we don't care about the people. We care about our own jobs. That's it. And so that frustrated the hell out of me. Is like, I can't go back in this very dishonest, disingenuous world.
Yeah. hear the honesty there, mate, and it's great to hear. It's very refreshing to hear. But even at the time, I'm sure you talk about frustration, but I'm sure there must have been some fear there as well, like that feeling that, okay, this part of my life has ended. You don't know who Arnold is just yet. You're about to step into coaching and then go on this journey to, where you are now. So can you talk to us a little bit about like what's happened, and where you are right now since, you've left the corporate world?
Yeah, and beside like an enormous amount of research study, and it's an ongoing thing, is trying to answer that question, who's Arnold? and Arnold, as you can tell by now, is definitely not a static thing. Yeah? So I'm now different than 2 years ago, than 20 years ago, whatever it is. So it's changing a lot, and I'm doing that intentionally because every time I find out new things, and new things to work on, and that is one part. So one of the things I started to do is, well, I set up my own business in various stuff. I was involved in a couple of startups with some people. All of them failed. And so that is what I did. Fast forward a couple of years. It was in 2019. Normally, I don't know, but I could look it up. And people ask me always that question: is like, Arnold, when does brain fitness start? It was September of 2019. I lived in the Netherlands. I was taking care of my mother with dementia and Parkinson, and I was helping my sister, who was just a few years earlier diagnosed with depression, which she already had as a teenager, but now she was in her 50s and it was finally diagnosed. So, but she was in a program, let's call it that, by a mental illness institution, and she had to go to certain classes and things, and it actually got worse. Yeah. So instead of that, these classes were helping her. She became more nervous and it didn't work. But these guys they were really like a business. They were running like, the utilization. We got a class, we still get 2 open slots. Well, why don't you go to that one? It's good for you. No, it's good for your business because you don't want any open slots in your business. Yeah? So, and she had finished something which she totally disliked, and I could understand why. She had the valid reason. And then it went, well, why don't you do it again? Well, so I went with her to talk with the management. The management of that they call it mental health. I don't call it mental health. It's got nothing to do with health. It's a mental illness institute. And I was horrified because I was waiting outside with my sister for the meeting. She went to a couple of other people who she had met in other classes. She came back to me and said, Arnold, there were 2 people in my class the previous week, and both of them committed suicide. Then we had a meeting with the management, and they were talking like, these classes are great and everything's working and she should go and she shouldn't do that. And I said, there were just 2 people who killed themselves, so apparently it's not working that great. Huh? And by the way, my sister's getting worse and it's not helping. And what you're doing is pushing your utilization or whatever. Oh, yeah? So I finally managed to get my sister out of that program. Then I got back on a bike, Netherlands biking. Yeah, so I get back and I'm like, I was on my way to my mother with dementia and Parkinson. So that was my world. Yeah? My sister with depression, my mother with it. And I'm like, you're totally screwed once you're in either of these positions. From my mother, there's no help. Nothing can help with that. Still not. And for my sister, it's kind of the same. Because what is there? They put you on the medicine and give you some classes and then repeat and rinse and repeat. Yeah? And I'm like, you really should be working on prevention. you really should be working on fitness. Just like for your body fitness, most people understand now, that's not always been the case. It's only for the last 20, 30 years that they need some movement and exercise. Well, I don't need to explain to you, but it's like, and it doesn't matter what you do, whether you go to the gym, you play tennis, or you go walk your dog, whatever, but at least get some movement going and do this thing. Why don't we do that for our brain?
And hence brain gym
That is
fitness.
where that is where my idea for brain fitness was born.
Yeah, wow. What an incredible journey you've had, and what kindness, obviously, you've had to show towards your mother and towards your sister to support them. But at the same time, it sounds like the journey that you've been on and the discoveries that you've had along the way has been something that's hopefully been helpful for those around you, not just for yourself as well. Is that what you found in terms of working with your family or being there with your family, or have you found that that's maybe a little bit too difficult because it's so close to home?
No. By the way, I'm a coach for 50 years this year.
Mm.
I started at 17 years old as a sports coach.
Yeah.
So coaching comes very natural to me. That was also part of my leadership style. So I always try to help people with what I learn. It's like, and I'm not, well, I read somewhere in a book. Now I applied it to my own life, and if it works, it's like maybe I can help other people with that. So that comes very natural to me. But it's like, and now this was 2019 where I talked about it, and where I'm now is like, it's now starting where I say is that the whole mental illness industry is totally fraud, and it's not working at all, and it's making things worse. And I've been saying this for a few years, and again, I have hands-on experience. I've been there. I talked to those guys. I'm working with all the things. Yeah. And now there are psychologists and psychiatrists who confirm what I'm saying. So well, for me, I'm an outsider. It's easier to say, but when your income is dependent on that industry, but they're very courageous people right now who are saying is like, you're right. The whole system is totally broken. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. We're seeing it more and more. Like you said before, you touched on it before. It's like a lot of systems are failing. A lot of companies are failing. A lot of the food industry, we're starting to see how these systems are trying to hijack our lives. And I think, we're becoming more awake to it. And it's awesome to see more people speaking out, especially some of the, pretty high powered people, or some of the leaders in the industry. I see it in health and fitness all the time. Functional medicine practitioners now speaking out a lot about health stuff. I think it's crazy some of the stuff that's going on in America right now with RFK and all the stuff that's going on there with their food system. It's sort of rocking the boat a little bit, but maybe not as much as it needs to be rocked. I digress a little bit, but I want to circle back and talk about this brain fitness that you mentioned. So what is brain? Let's dive into this brain fitness. Like you've sort of told us how you came up with the idea, but what's the underlying structure? How does it work?
Basically, what I have a training program where I help people to give them a foundation, and based upon that foundation, they can apply it themselves. It's just like with your body fitness, is like, well, you're a trainer in that aspect, but it's like you don't need someone to help you if you have your own practice and your own thing going on, and you can apply that. So it's I want to give people a foundation where I literally help to uncondition them, because we're all conditioned in a certain way, and I uncondition them so that they're free to live their own life instead of living someone else's life. And once that foundation is there, you can apply it yourself. So you don't need me anymore. So I have this foundational training of 15 weeks, and it consists of 6 steps. Number 1 is reveal. It's called 6 R's. Number 1 is reveal. Reveal is, I revealed the cage. I just mentioned the cage, that we're all in the cage. And I have identified 35 different straitjackets that we have. They're invisible straitjackets. Most people have most of these 35. I had most of them. And those are straitjackets by our society, by our upbringing, by the educational system, which put them on us. And I help people to, well, they must do it themselves, but it's like to remove them. The next step is to recover. You need to recover from being a slave in a system. And recover means a lot of us are somehow addicted to something. Because it's not nice to live in a cage. So that's why we look for distractions, and most of these distractions will get into addictions. But it's also the suppression of our emotions. In the business world, you're not supposed to share your emotions. You're not supposed to, you're supposed to not listen to them, or at least push them away. So you need to recover from that. Reactivate is the third R. Reactivate is that we focus in the outside world mostly on our mental thing, but we forget about emotional, spiritual, physical, environmental, social aspect. So you need to activate those things are there. Simple example is every person is creative. Every person. But if I give a presentation to a group and say, please raise your hand if you think you're creative, it will be one or two. Well, you were creative. There's a NASA study which shows that our ultimate level of creativity is between 7 and 9. And then it's completely pushed away. So we think we're not creative, but we are. The fourth R is called reset. We need to look at the world with a different lens. When you have green glasses, the world looks different than when you have orange glasses. So we need to look at the world in a different way and see that, hey, they're just looking at us as, well, it's literally called human resources. They're looking at us as a resource, not as a, it's not called human beings. No, it's a human resource. So the fifth one is called Relearn. We got to learn. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of skills. There's a lot of mindset which we need to learn to live our own life, which we got to figure out, which we don't know. And that can be from learning about doing meditation up to what you just shared is like eating healthy food. Like everything, I don't know whether you know about what's happening with geoengineering and bioengineering. There's horrible things happening in our world, which impact my health and your health as well. So what are you doing about it? And the last one is recreate. Is like once you're through that is, well, recreate your own environment, recreate maybe a community, maybe your city, maybe your country, maybe bigger thing. It doesn't matter. It can be small, can be big, but create something new which you think is better than what exists.
Yep. 6 R's sounds like a very intense journey, and there's a lot going on in there. Where do you think most people get stuck in a journey like that?
Well, if they follow my program, they're not getting stuck because that's the way the program is set up. But most people get stuck is that well, there is no common denominator. But one of the key things what I see with people is that their motivation is not really big. It's like if they see that it involves hard work over a longer period of time, then they're out. Huh? So, especially these days with the horrible influence of AI and social media and everything else, is everybody's only looking for a quick fix. Everybody's looking for instant gratification. That's not the case with my program. That's not the case with your program. It's like it takes daily effort. And then you get amazing results, but over time. And you got to keep on doing that. Yeah. And that is where people get out, because it's like, well, I had 2 sessions, nothing changed. Yeah. But what did you do yourself? Oh, basically nothing. Yes. It's like, yeah, that is when things don't work.
Mm. I think doing the work is the hard work, isn't it? And it can be tough, especially when you've got to actually ask yourself a lot of those powerful questions, look under the hood, and really try and connect with maybe your values, maybe the vision of who you want to become, understanding your strengths. Obviously, someone that's got great curiosity, like yourself, Arnold, who wants to dive into this stuff. It sounds like a love of learning, who wants to change their life. They're the perfect sort of candidate. You're ready to make change, ready to dive into this. But I'm just curious, like, who are the people that are coming to you? Do you see any sort of similarities between these people? Is it a certain age group? Who are the people that are getting on
Well,
board with this?
I really identified the same target group as yours. Yeah, so it's like
Mm.
I call it midlife professionals. Yeah, midlife professionals who want to unlock their potential. Yeah? Meaning someone in their 40s, 50s who is laid off, which is happening now like crazy. It's not so much in the news, but it's happening a lot at the moment. Through to AI, they kick out all the people, but it's not in the news, but it's happening as we speak. And then they realize, like, oh, by now I thought I would be the big boss, or or I would be a millionaire, or so my work, the promises they made didn't come out. Uh, my marriage is not so exciting anymore. I got problem with my kids. They even see a psychologist every week. Huh? My health is not really as it should have been. Huh? How does the rest of my life look like?
So,
That is a large
yeah,
group of people.
yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah, stuff, isn't it? How do you explain maybe how your life has changed since you've left, the corporate world, and you've done the coaching and you've dived into, all of this sort of stuff, asking yourself these questions. Like you were talking about how you've moved countries, you've changed where you've lived, you've changed the environment around you. Obviously, that's having an effect. But what other things are, part of Arnold now that weren't before?
Yeah, I'm inclined to say everything. Yes, everything is different. Yeah, when I've worked in the corporate environment, and that's true for everybody, is like your whole agenda for your calendar for the week is fixed. Yeah, so it's like whatever. Early in the morning, you go to the office. Well, you hop in the car. You're in the traffic jam. You're at the office. You get all meetings, whatever. Then you're at home at 7 or around whatever. Then you got to eat and well, maybe watch some TV, read something, whatever, and then you're just in this treadmill. Yeah? You're not realizing it, but you're in the treadmill. So that's a huge difference between the life I'm living now, because I can stay in bed all day and nobody's going to call me. Yes, yeah. Um, but I can study a book about psychology the whole day, and that is also okay. Yeah, so it's like it's much more to your own discipline and following your curiosity and having a certain trajectory. That is a huge shift. So you got to build your life, because nobody's going to tell me, is like, hey, Arnold, you should be doing this. And so that is living your own life. At the same time, But the main shift is I was not easy with strangers in the sense that I find is, well, I don't know them or whatever. It's like a bit distant, whatever. When people know me and I knew them, I had very, very good relationship. Now well, I wouldn't say the opposite, but it's like I have with the strangers within 5 minutes, they tell me their whole life story. It's like I'm much easier in connecting with people from all walks of life, literally all walks of life. And I'm like, that makes my life so much more interesting. Huh? And another thing which just pops in my head, Stretch, is that before that, I was focused on material things. Yeah, it's like, oh, I can buy a nice suit. I had tailor-made suits. Yeah? Or buy an expensive watch. Or we had no children. So when I was married, we would go 3 times per year on holiday all over the world. Huh? Yeah, I had a Mercedes. Yeah, so everything is like, it's outer stuff. Now for me, the only thing which counts is my inner world. Outer stuff I don't care about at all. Huh? Now I'm happy. Each morning, I go for a morning walk. There's a guy feeding pigeons out of his window, and I see him, and he's an old guy, whatever. Every morning, I wave to him. I got now, if you walk with me, there are 5, 6 people I wave, and I said, good morning. I don't know what it is in Romanian, but I trained them to say good morning as well. So I wave to them, and I'm like, oh, this is such a beautiful day.
It's awesome, mate. I like that story, and it's just resonates in a sense of just you living a life that aligns with who you are right now, where you want to be, and what's important to you. And it's great to hear that it's easy for you to create these relationships and connection because we know how important all that stuff is. You talked about straitjackets and you talked about us being locked in a cage and all these sort of things. So it's like we've been conditioned and we're stuck in this sort of process. And I think a lot of men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, the audience that we're speaking to, they struggle to see a path out because they feel the pressure of the mortgage. They feel the pressure of their work. They feel the pressure of maybe, family, kids, dependency. And they're just stuck or they feel disconnected or stuck from that. They understand that something needs to change, but they're just like, well, how do I make that first step? Can you give us anything that might be able to help these guys? Is there a powerful question, something they should reflect on? How do you start someone on this journey to help them realize that they can get out of this straitjacket or get out of this stuck place?
The way you phrase it, I would like to answer it that the number one thing where I think is critical for people to understand is that you start focusing on what your uniqueness is. What is your uniqueness? And uniqueness is not one thing, it's preferably 2 or 3 things. Yeah, let me give the example that's where I get the exercises. An exercise from, Dilbert, the cartoonist?
Yes. Yes.
So I'm paraphrasing, but he said like, I'm not the best cartoonist in the world, but I can decently make cartoons. So this cartoon, he said, I'm not having the most humor, but it's pretty decent. People laugh at me sometimes. And I got experience in the business world. So he combined those 3 strengths into what he's doing. So he created these cartoons about things which we can all relate to about the business world. Yeah, so instead of focusing on, I'm going to be the best basketball player in the world, which is only 0.0001% of anything, yeah? Don't focus on one thing. If you have that, fine, congratulations. But then you probably won't be interested in this program anyway. But it's like, focus on those 2 or 3 things which are unique about Stretch, which are unique about Arnold, which is unique thing. Yeah. And then start building around that. Is like, how can I apply it? What can I do? And what do I love to do with it? Yeah. And so that's where you start building your fortress, if you will. Yeah. It's like, build it around your uniqueness. Because that is what we want, is that we have been in a cage. We were not free. We have 35 different straitjackets. So to get rid of it is like, yeah, those are my unique things. How can I? Yeah, that's where I'm unique. Yeah? And it doesn't have to be big things. It can be that you bake cookies and everybody loves your cookies. You're like, oh, okay. Huh? And you love telemarketing, whatever it is. Oh, telemarketing and cooking. Maybe I can just make a service where I send people my cookies.
So simple, but yet so effective, mate. I think if we could all figure out our strengths and what we're good at, and just being able to apply them in a way that brings us more joy and brings us the security that we need, the world could be a better place for sure, couldn't it? So it's an interesting way to put it. Is there certain tools that you
Yeah, but
find?
that also has an impact. Sorry to interrupt, but that also has an impact on the people around you. If you feel better in your own skin, if you're more healthy, if you're more, you feel more fulfilled, whatever, you don't lash out to your kids so much, or you can be more kind to your wife or to your neighbor or whatever, because, hey, I'm feeling better anyway.
Yep. Like the saying is, we are the people we spend the most time with. So you surround yourself with the right people can make all the difference in every part of our life, not just in our work. Yeah, for sure. I was going to say, is there certain tools that you find are helpful for someone going through this journey? There's obviously a lot of reflection going on and asking those deep questions. As part of your program, meditation is part of it, journaling. What other things do you bring in that can just sort of help people, I suppose, create that space or unlock the process of where they need to go?
Yes, and already you mentioned it already, but it came to mind is that I think journaling is extremely helpful, huh? Throughout your life and throughout the rest of your life. So I encourage people, start journaling today and keep on doing it the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you have to do it every day. You can do it every other day or whatever, just as you feel like it. But journaling is very good because it helps to express your inner dialogue. Huh? And it's well, it's a common thing. Is like, don't let it read someone else your journal. It's just, the journal is for you and for you only. Yeah? And that helps you with your inner conversation, or sometimes it's inner stress, sometimes it's in, but it's like, instead of ruminating and going rounds in loops and loops and loops, I'm really good at that. It's really shitty. It's like, but it's like, write it down in your journal. That already, that releases a lot. So journaling, I don't recommend. If you love meditation, please keep on doing it. But meditation creates a lot of stress with a lot of people because they have the feeling they don't do it correctly and it's not really working or whatever. So journaling is really good. But, well, basically, move, do some exercise. And again, it doesn't matter. I go, like I just said, I go walk each morning. I used to go run, but I had 3.5 years of very, very severe car crash. I cannot run anymore. So, but now I walk each morning. And so it's like, that's my highlight of the day. So if you're stuck, whatever, it's like, move. Yeah. If you want to go swim, if you want to walk your dog, if it doesn't matter, move. Yeah. So that is really important. Those are the things which come to mind. Stretch.
Yeah, awesome. I like that. I think meditation for me is one of those things. I go in and out of phases with it, but I do sometimes find it's not as productive. Exercise for me has always been what's got the juices flowing. Like I feel the most creative when I'm moving, when I'm training, whether that's doing handstands, deadlifting, squatting, whatever. But just find that that's where I create space where I can be in my body. And when I create that space where I can be in my body, then that's what brings me the most joy and it brings me the most creativity. Like a lot of times when I'm training, it's like, oh, and I think about all these great ideas, all these things start popping into my head. And it just comes down to doing that movement or doing something that I'm passionate about. Whereas on the days where maybe I'm sick or I'm not training or something's getting in the way for that, if I don't get out and move, I definitely feel, more stuck, more lost with things, more ruminating in my head. So I can definitely relate to get out and move. I think it's definitely one of the best things that we can do. And if we're not doing that, it should be part of our life every day. The journaling thing for
But
me, still trying to
that's the
get
thing.
over that hurdle.
There's a huge paradox in that because we've been trained is like, because if you're moving or exercising, you're not working. Yeah. So you feel kind of guilty. Yeah. So it's like, but I tell you, 95% of my ideas come while I'm walking or when I just finished walking or when I'm under the shower after my walking or, yeah. So all of the good stuff comes during or after the exercise, after the moving. Yeah, so it's like, but that feels strange because in the beginning I felt guilty. It's like, oh, I did go walk, or well, I used to play golf, which I cannot do anymore, also because of the accident. But it's like, oh, I play, but with the when I played golf in the morning, in the afternoon, I would have 26 new ideas. Yeah, so it's like just by sitting on behind my screen, there wouldn't be 26 new ideas. Yeah, so it's like we gotta adjust to all these things, like staring at the screen for 8, 10 hours a day. No, no, go out on your bike, go walk, go do whatever, and it's like you get insights, you get help, you get stories. You're like, oh wow. Huh?
Yeah, yeah, so important. I think some guys, we feel that exercise or taking up that time to move can be selfish, especially if we've got a family or we've got, all these responsibilities that we're trying to juggle. But I think you said it nicely before. You touched on the idea of like, how are you showing up as the best version of yourself? And if you're coming home after work and you're frustrated and you're tired and you're angry and you're not really present with the family anyway, like to take a bit of time to clear your headspace, maybe take out a bit of frustration going for a run or lifting some weights or doing whatever. Then when you come back into that space, you're a better person. You're going to engage more with your family. You're going to feel better about yourself and have more confidence. And you're going to show up as a better person, a better father, a better partner, a better colleague, all these things, a better mate. So I don't see that as an excuse. And it's just something I want to add in there because sometimes when I talk to men, they're like, oh, it's just, see it as too selfish, or I don't have the time, or I've got too many responsibilities. And it sort of resonates with what you're saying now. You can feel a bit guilty going out and playing golf or going out and going for a walk, but sometimes we need that space. We need to be able to prioritize a bit of self-care, some self-love, and to get away from the rat race, the hustle and the grind, so that we can reflect and we can have those moments of insight about where we want to go and where we want to head. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's we can always find the time. That's why I say if we're really motivated, we can find the time because the other person, he would just dump on the couch, drink a couple of beers and scrolls his phone. Eh? Or say, well, let's look a movie on Netflix. Eh? Well, you could go play tennis. You could go walk your dog. You could bring your kid to the football, whatever. It's like we always have time. There's always time, and the bit busy it's not about time. It's about prioritization.
Yeah.
Huh?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was about to say it's all about priorities, isn't it? If you get your priorities aligned, then we can definitely start to find the time for that. If we don't start to look after our brain fitness, as you put it, as a collective, like where do you see the world heading?
Well, that is already happening. Unfortunately, that's why I'm doing my utmost best to hopefully make brain fitness equally important as body fitness. But now with the introduction of all these AI tools, it's really, really moving into a dark direction. What do I mean by that? There's been the last few weeks, quite a lot of research has come out that people who frequently, and if not 100% of the time, use these AI tools to write stuff, to write articles, to read things, to summarize things, whatever, their cognitive decline is already setting, and a lot of things they cannot even correct anymore. So critical thinking, understanding, writing, all of these things are being destroyed, by those tools. Yes, so that is making me very sad, and I see it happening in front of our eyes. And I've been talking to people with teenagers. I'm in touch with someone who's writing a PhD at the University of Namibia. So, and he says the students here, it's a big problem. Yeah? They cannot remember, the memory is shit. They cannot recall, they cannot write, their critical thinking is not non-existing. Yeah, and that is because of social media, and because, like I just said, all of these AI tools where you let that do the work for you. But it's the same thing as with your body stretch. It's like, if you don't use it, you lose it. Yeah, so that is true for your brain as well. Yeah? Let me give you a simple thing where I did lose something. It's like, and I'm not talking about my TBI, which I had and I still have problems with due to the car crash. When I was at high school, I had 6 years of German. After these 6 years, I was totally fluent in German. Yeah? I could read it, I could write it, I could understand, I could have conversations. Totally, you could just put me in Germany and no problems at all. Since that time, now I've not even been 10 times in Germany, and I had business meetings in Germany, but it was an American company, so we spoke English. So only a few occasions where I had to use it. Actually, here there are some people, I'm in Romania, some people speak German, but when they speak to me, I can understand 90% of what they say, but I have no vocabulary. The vocabulary is totally gone. And I don't know how do you call it? Well, I don't know whether it's female or male, because in German that's really, whether it's plural or single, it's really difficult. But it used to be a piece of cake. But it's just a simple example is I didn't use it, so I did lose it. Yeah? But that is true with everything. If I stop writing articles and I let AI write my articles, I lose the capability of writing a decent article.
Yeah. It's a powerful insight, isn't it, mate? And it's like a muscle. Like you said, it's like training. The brain is a muscle. And if we're not using it or not utilizing it in that way, we're obviously going backwards at a great rate of nights. And I think it's so much harder for the younger generations these days because they're exposed to stuff that you and I weren't exposed to when we were their age. Like, I think Facebook came out when I was maybe end of high school, and then social media sort of grew after that. And obviously AI is the next big thing that's sort of coming out, that we didn't have to juggle as kids. So, you had the opportunity to sit down and learn German. And, we had different things that we were learning as kids, but now kids might not even be learning that because they can just use AI to do their homework or, write an article or write an essay. And it's scary to think where we're heading. It seems like we're getting, how you put it, more stuck in the cage, or getting more straitjackets put on top of us, making it harder and harder for us to escape. So it's like we're just under more and more control and dependent on so many things of maybe technology, that we just can't break free. Would you agree with that, or how do you see it going?
Oh, I 200% agree with you. It's like it's well researched and documented. The AI tool is not for our benefit; it's to totally control us, and that's the way. That's why it's being rolled out so fast, and that's why it's not for our benefit. Yeah? And I totally agree with you saying. That's why it's so important that more and more people start to wake up and more people start to realize what all of these things, and that is from what you mentioned earlier, like what they put in our food, what they put in the chemtrails, in the spraying, in in the drinking water, in they put now, even is like it's become mandatory in a country like Norway. They go, it's something called bovar, which is basically a chemical poison that the cows stop farting because that is supposed to influence climate change. But you drink that poison, it gets into your system. Yeah, so but the farmers now are no longer getting subsidies if they don't put the bovar in the food of these cows. So we're being manipulated at so many levels which impact your health. Yeah, my health is being impacted because the chemtrails here are every day. Yeah, so it's like I cannot escape that. Yeah, but it's like that's why it's even more important to make sure that at least at the levels which I can influence, is that I make sure I'm healthy and I'm doing the right things. Yeah, so but that is why it's, I think, really crucial to build community, to look for like-minded people. There are like-minded, but everybody's kind of in isolation, because if you talk about this stuff to a lot of people, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, or you're a this or a that, or whatever. But it's not. You're just a person whose common sense is still working.
Yes, I agree, Ray. I agree 100%. It's funny that you bring that up because the bovine stuff, we're here in Australia too. Our big supermarkets, Coles and Safeway, and the farmers that they work with are doing that right now in Australia. And I refuse to buy. I refuse to shop at these big supermarkets because it just doesn't support the community, and they're taking over our farmland and they're dictating our food. And the more control we give them, the less control we can have to take back. So I think you're right. We have to be aware of this, and it might seem a bit conspiracy theorist, but I think it's out there. And if you're awake to it and you're curious about it and you dive into it, we start to uncover a lot. And yeah, I think it's heading in a terrible direction here in Australia, like it is in a lot of places around the world. But we vote with our wallets, and we vote with everything we buy every day, and we do have choices. I think we just have to start looking at those choices and choosing the best things for our health, our well-being, and our happiness as we move forward.
What I was going to say is, like, I buy my food here from there are a couple of big farmers markets here,
Mm.
and there are a couple of and these are just the farmer's wife selling the stuff, and the husband is working on the land. Yeah, they get small pieces of land or whatever. The food, when you taste the food, is like in the Netherlands. I used to eat only from the supermarket, but here is like the taste and the nutrition is so different from when you buy from a real farmer, organic farmer who has it's his own product, it's his own stuff. It's totally different. Yeah, so but it's like, yeah, well, there's a lot of in this world which we cannot influence, but there are still things which we can influence, and that's what we should be doing.
I agree with you all the way there. And I think it starts with, exercise, it starts with food, it starts with the choices that we can make there, keeping moving, maybe avoiding AI and, doing more journaling. All that stuff is great advice. And I really appreciate, your time and being able to chat about that and share your insights and your coaching around that. If people want to find out more about what you do, where can they find you?
My website name is called braingym.fitness. Braingym.fitness. There they can find, I got a couple of masterclasses. They're 90-minute videos around specific topics, like how to deal with your emotions, how to figure out your uniqueness, relationships. Curiosity is also one. So those are around specific for vertical topics. And there is the 15-week training program, from fitting in to flying out. One 90-minute session each week. In the week in the meantime, you try to apply it, research it, yeah, practice it in your own life, and then the week after that we got another session. So braingym.fitness.
Gym.fitness. There you go. Is there anything we haven't covered today in the podcast? Anything you'd like to mention, especially to the audience that we have, particularly a lot of men in midlife, before we finish up, Arnold?
The main thing I would like to say to people, well, we serve the same audience, Stretch, is, and I know it's difficult, I know it's challenging, but still you can do it. And the only way you can do it is to be kind to yourself.
Beautiful.
That's something which we don't, because we are our inner, it's literally called our inner critic. And I say you got to change your inner critic into your inner cheerleader.
Yep.
Our inner voice is the most critical of anybody. If what I would say internally to myself to you is like, you would hop in a plane and beat me up. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's like horrible how we communicate with ourselves. Yeah. So that's why I say, if you're going to this change and basically the rest of your life, be kind to yourself.
Really powerful message. I thank you for sharing your story, your quest, and your framework with us. And I wish you all the best with Brain Gym Fitness, mate.
Thank you very much.
Arnold, thanks so much for sharing your story, your framework, and the wisdom you've gained on your journey from fitting in to truly flying out. It's powerful to hear how we can dismantle these mental and emotional straitjackets and step into a more authentic, purpose-driven life. To all of you listening, if this conversation sparks something inside of you, if you're feeling stuck or wondering what might be possible for your next chapter, I've got a simple first step for you. Head over to midlife-mavericks.com.au and take the free midlife assessment scorecard. It's a quick way to get a clear picture of where you're thriving, where you might be struggling, and where to focus your time and energy so you can start reclaiming your vitality and purpose. Don't keep living someone else's story. Take the midlife assessment today and start writing your own story. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.